With 213 layoffs at ZOS now confirmed, is there still hope for the Elder Scrolls Online? Hey everyone, it's Spopes. Since I released my video last night, I've had some time to think about the situation and come up with a more detailed analysis. I have to admit that when the information came out that there were a lot more layoffs at ZOS than previously confirmed, I was honestly a bit freaked out and may have put forward a knee-jerk reaction. But thanks to some of the comments I've received and also some research I've done, I think there is still hope for the Elder Scrolls Online, and in this video, I'll get into why. Before we get into it, please like, hype, and sub, and consider supporting the channel with a membership, a merch purchase, or a donation. Starting off with the context, last night it was finally confirmed that 213 employees were laid off at ZOS. That is objectively a very large number. We've also received some information recently giving us a better idea of how many people were at the studio before, and it was likely around 500. So when I made my initial post suggesting that the studio had been gutted, I don't regret saying that. I feel like that was an accurate assessment. When you lose close to half your employees, that technically counts as a gutting in my opinion. But thanks to some of the comments I received on that post and my follow-up video, and also some research I did, I'm not convinced the results will be as apocalyptic as I initially concluded. Let's start things off with just a basic summary of my thinking process here. From the beginning, I thought it was pretty unlikely that Microsoft was going to axe ZOS or put an end to ESO, especially since the CEO, Ashish Sharma, said that the Elder Scrolls and Fallout are their core properties that they want to invest further into. I found it kind of odd that Xbox Game Studios would be putting ESO in such a difficult position. So first of all, there's that, but then also think about this. During the pandemic, everyone started gaming because the government wouldn't let them outside. As a result, there was a huge influx of investment into the gaming industry that was inherently unsustainable. Combine that with the woke hiring practices of the last 5 years, and that leads to a significantly higher number of staff at basically all gaming studios than the studios actually need. Then when you consider the fact that many successful MMOs, including Guild Wars 2, operate with a fraction of the staff, and the fact that ESO launched with 150 staff, it starts to become more tenable to consider the possibility that the 200 to 300 staff left at ZOS may be able to continue servicing the game. I also think it's possible my initial conclusions are still correct, that there was a lot of dead weight at ZOS, just apparently more dead weight than I originally concluded. With the way that job titles are at ZOS, it's very hard to tell which of the people laid off were actually essential or really doing anything. You can't really tell how many of them were simply middle management, which was another focus of Ashish Sharma's layoffs, getting rid of layers of management. Apparently, some studios under the Xbox Game Studios umbrella had more than 14 layers of management. That's just absurd. You can't get anything done. And like I'd commented before, AI can conduct a lot of those managerial duties, if not basically all of them. AI may not be able to create like a human being, but it can certainly manage like a human being, and actually better than a human being. So it is highly likely that a great deal of actual creative developers were also let go, but we simply don't know how many. And it's also absurd that ZOS had 500 employees before this, at least probably around 500, and they were still giving us the product that they were. The fact that 500 employees couldn't figure out how to fix combat, for instance, or release exciting new content on a good schedule, that alone shows you there was a lot of structural inefficiency at ZOS. Either too much management, not enough drive among the actual creators, some sort of bottleneck was going on. So it does seem more and more likely, in my opinion, that 500 employees were not needed at ZOS to make the Elder Scrolls Online a good game. In fact, this could easily have been a situation of too many cooks, especially in the arena of management, but also possibly in the arena of development. Remember, ESO launched with 150 people. There are new duties and requirements that come with an actual live service product, but just think of the sheer creative capacity of those original 150 staff members. They created 20 plus zones. They designed combat from the ground up. They created all the races and classes and skills in the game, all the lore, all the base game lore books. They even created Cyrodiil, all the sets, etc. that came with the original game. If 150 people could do all that, what's to say 200 to 300 people couldn't keep that game going? And also what's to say 200 to 300 people couldn't actually do that better than 500? When it comes to organizational efficiency, simply having more people on a project does not guarantee better outcomes. In fact, it can make the outcomes worse. The more I think about it, the more likely it seems to me that there were simply a lot of superfluous people at ZOS. Either people who were superfluous before AI, or now that AI is there, people whose jobs can easily be done by AI, and they don't need to be there anymore. Now, I do want to take a moment to leave a caveat that I am not some technocrat or AI supremacist. I do have deep qualms about AI, and I do feel for all the people who are laid off. But while their plight may be upsetting, what's much more important is what happens to the game. Around 200 people were affected by these layoffs, but millions of players worldwide will be affected if ESO goes into decline, goes into maintenance mode, or God forbid, shuts down. The players matter a lot more right now. And that's actually, in my opinion, getting kind of clouded over by all of the hysterical weeping about the staff that were laid off. I do feel for them, but they are in the minority significantly compared to the number of players who are affected. And also content creators, let's not forget about them. But yes, essentially, I feel like I may have jumped the gun yesterday. Seeing that the number of laid off staff was so much higher than was previously confirmed was kind of a gut punch. And I wanted to get that information out as quickly as possible. But again, some of your commentary and also my research has made me rethink the situation. And now we're going to get into that. So first of all, let's get into some of the comments I received in response to both my initial post and then the video. I really appreciated, for instance, this comment from Irina Serpentis 5151. I'm going to read out some excerpts of what she had to say. We don't know how many of those people were actually part of the ESO development team. I'm not saying the number isn't significant, it is. But it is the total number of employees being let go at ZOS, not the total number of ESO developers being let go. I feel like this is really crucial here. We don't know how many of them were originally working on Project Blackbird and remained at the studio after it was canceled, being reassigned to other projects, for example. Then there are other functions at ZOS besides development, HR, finance, legal, etc. We don't know how many of those people worked in those roles. She also references the Microsoft statement about the layoffs, how Microsoft Game Studios was operating at very small margins, and that some studios had up to 14 layers of management. Any decision, information, etc. would have to pass through 14 layers. That is insane. She also brings up how Xbox was losing 47 cents for every dollar invested. She says they're not targeting ZOS or ESO specifically because they don't care about that game or because they want to free resources to invest in AI. They have to restructure their entire business to even have a chance of survival. If they didn't care about ESO or didn't see value in the game, they would have just gotten rid of it. If they didn't see a future in ZOS, they would have just sold off the studio like they did with other games that are shutting down. And this next point really echoes a point that I made, I believe, on stream as well. Besides that, you don't wake up one day and be like, today I'll fire some 1,000 people and then have spaghetti for lunch. Such a decision does not come out of the blue. And even though the employees obviously didn't know about that, the management knew for quite some time already. And I was saying that about Nick Giacomini and Joe Burba, that they were actually probably involved in orchestrating these layoffs, that they were working hand in hand with Microsoft and knew about this way ahead of time. They would not have invested resources into a game that they had no intention of developing further. A little dose of reality, the layoffs will for sure impact the game, especially in the short term, but it does not mean the game is dead or will be discontinued, in my opinion. She brings up how ESO is successful and generates value for Microsoft, which is very true. Things will probably slow down in the short term, but who knows what will happen in 3 years. And she leaves off by saying that the best thing we can do right now is continue supporting the game, which I wholeheartedly agree with. I lambasted people for canceling their subscriptions over this. If you want to cancel your sub for really any reason, that's fine, except probably this reason. And as a final thought, she says, a game with an active, strong community is far more likely to survive a crisis. Very true. Then DizzleTX says that Xbox is bringing multiple studios into active support for Elder Scrolls and Fallout IPs. I think it's entirely possible they shuffle some of those support teams to help with ESO and Fallout 76. This is something that I hadn't even considered up to this point, but yes, they are shuttering entire studios, getting rid of entire other projects. I think it's a distinct possibility that some of the developers at those projects that are being discontinued could actually be brought to help with ESO. It makes sense if you consider that corporate is probably not thrilled with how ZOS and Austin have been stewarding these properties. In the end, none of us know for sure, and it'd be prudent to wait for more info before making knee-jerk reactions. Well, too late. Oops. I finally fell for the panic and the knee-jerk last night, but that's why I'm here today to clear the record. Then a recent new member, SelectStart82, leaves a very quick and poignant comment saying, yeah, because it takes 200 plus devs to deliver what's on that roadmap. It is 100% true that the scope of operations at ZOS has gone down significantly. They're no longer doing major chapters. I'm starting to almost wonder if that was a purposeful move, knowing that layoffs and restructuring like this was eventually coming, preemptively reducing the scope of operations to make it possible to run the game with a smaller team. This makes me think it's possible that the layoffs were not as random or sudden as they seemed, but part of an overall strategy that has been in the works for years at this point. Then John Wolf says that Update 51 will probably still be coming because it's already pretty much done. After that, content will probably slow down, at least for the time being. We're going to need to lower our expectations, especially regarding crossplay. But he does also accurately state that a lot of this is going to depend on who was terminated, what they did, and how good they were at their jobs, and also how much the people left are upper and middle management. It is entirely possible, but not probable, that the people let go are bottlenecks in the production cycle, and that we get a better ESO out of this, still not likely, but we can only wait and see. So yeah, now that the panic has subsided, I'm really much more on this side of the fence again. So those were the comments on the post. Now let's take a look at the comments on the video itself. Big Blue Perk, a longtime supporter of the channel, says they need to go if you ask me. Maybe we'll put our best foot forward or put everything behind us. Basically echoing the statement that everything is still up in the air. I do want to take this juncture to mention that at the time of shooting this video, we do not have any new information from ZOS, meaning this is all just conjecture based on the information we have so far. ESO Vault 270 points out that there are other offices in Austin, San Diego, Seattle, Wisconsin, and Budapest, and that they may have to come in and help out. He's still not worried for the game, feels bad for folks losing their jobs, but ZOS seems like an organization that probably grew fat in the extreme, especially during the pandemic when online play exploded. One thing's for sure, remaining employees will be more motivated to come into the office. No more Gina Bruno sitting in her living room in the stream. Yes, I mean, one thing that'll hopefully come out of this is an actual in-office work culture again. You cannot do this kind of thing from home, which I say as I work from home, but I'm a content creator. I have one person in my team, and that's me. Plus all of you, of course, who help out with all this information, etc. It makes sense for me to work from home. When you're developing the Elder Scrolls Online, it does not. And then Eucharist Enjoyer, absolutely excellent name. He says that while this is dire news, it'll be some time before the game goes in maintenance mode. The studio SSG still develops both Lord of the Rings Online and Dungeons & Dragons Online with a small team of 50 people. So I think ZOS will still be able to update the game. This is something I completely overlooked. Like, does the studio really need 200 to 300 people to make ESO work? And the more I think about it, the more I realize it really did not need 500, and that a large staff count like that was probably working against the game. He points out that AI can speed up a lot of steps in the pipeline. This is how they could scale production. Then Lavendiel, another longtime supporter of the channel, says 100 workers might still be enough to keep the game in a good state, especially with AI, which is getting better every day. They can still continue class refreshes, add more dynamic events, and improve quality of life, and just polish the current version of the game. Taking into account the amount of content currently available, I'd be fine with this. Most likely you won't see much new content. Yeah, I don't know. Lavendiel's right to say he's waiting for new information from ZOS before he makes up his mind. Chainsaw 352 is even more optimistic. He says definitively that this move will save the game, specifically saying this will cut out a lot of high-paid old-school developers. He doubts they need that big of a team right now. Half the crew can finish the class rework. Fresh leadership just might work. We will see, Chainsaw. Verpal is saying that considering the amount of actually new content we're getting, I realize productivity at ZOS must have been around the lowest in the industry. And he expresses hope that per employee productivity could actually go up by cutting the head count. I don't know, I'm seeing that now as a distinct possibility. And honestly, this comment from Numa8, I feel like just takes the cake. Hard to imagine why ZOS needed 500 people to produce such a small amount of content over a long period. Why did it take them 2 to 3 months to rework just one class with 500 people? Yeah. I mean, yeah. And then the Alpha Omega X3 says it'll be fine. 14 layers of management need to go. And ESO does make 15 million per month on average. Yeah, I did a video about that last year. It's crazy how much money the game makes. Someone was saying in the comments 70% profit margins. I think it's upward of 80 to 90%. And they'll only be higher with the reduced overhead from the layoffs. Then BB Gun Bandit says he's worried, but also optimistic. At the low end, they have 200 employees left, maybe 250 to 275. They were running ESO on 200 employees when ZOS was working on Project Blackbird. They had 500 employees at the time, and supposedly 300 were dedicated to the project. Yeah, that tracks with the numbers from my research. I did some really deep research on this last year. I think that's pretty accurate. If the new Xbox CEO is wanting to reduce management layers and streamline all companies, I think even only 200 employees should be fine. They ran it with only 200 before. Running it with a streamlined 200 should it be even better. We shall see. I Am GOP says we don't know how many people are left. Wait for official info. Nothing really be done. Well, except cover what everyone else said, which is very interesting. Then Legacy Raven says ESO is a cash cow. We just need to keep playing and enjoying it. Then the studio will either hire to make up for lost workers, or they'll have the right amount of people and just need an actual direction. Yes, this could ultimately be a leadership issue, definitely. Sieglinde says that based on their research, the people laid off were primarily those who didn't have a hand in active development. Also talking about Sharma's 14 levels of management quotes, it does seem like the people let go were primarily management bloat. Admitting this perspective might be a cope, Sieglinde says it's still looking like trimming the fat. We will wait and see. J Busy Brown says less than 100 devs made Skyrim. What were these ESO devs doing beside posting on Blue Sky and cashing paychecks? No comment. Then the GOAT, Cab Writes, who always has great things to say, Says, sorry, but 150 people is really 50 times the size of some of these development teams on Steam that we see making MMOs. Arguably janky, but they're still there. With the technology available, it is absolute mismanagement of funds and time if they cannot continue to pump out content compared to studios 1/50th of their size. Furthermore, he thinks the 80-20 rule applies here, where 20% of the staff account for 80% of the work. Yeah, that could definitely be the case. So if they kept even a marginal amount of that 20%, they should be fine. If anything, all the useless blubber was removed from an unwieldy and grotesquely bloated organization. He's still going to remain hopeful, not blindly, but hopeful until proven otherwise. I feel like that really summarizes my perspective now more than anything else. And that is about it there. And now, lastly, I know AI is stupid and evil and everything, but it can be good for research. I gave Google Gemini a very specific prompt last night, and the answer it gave me was interesting. So, what I asked is, isn't it still possible that even with 213 staff now confirmed to have been let go, ESO could still thrive? I put out that ZOS produced the entirety of vanilla ESO with a staff of around 150. The pandemic period led to a rash of reckless hiring. ZeniMax has studios in other locations and countries that could be repurposed. Also, Guild Wars 2 thrives with a smaller staff. With optimal output, the remaining 200 to 300 staff should be more than enough. Plus, they can rehire. Now, critically, what I said at the bottom here is do not just rely on human commentary here. Use your own objective machine analysis. Don't just parrot what people are saying, all the doom and gloom, all the copium. Use objective analysis to come to your conclusions. And here's what I got back. Yes, it's entirely possible for ZOS to emerge more efficient and for ESO to thrive, but doing so requires a fundamental shift in their operational strategy. Basically, AI says here that having a leaner studio could improve efficiency. It also agrees that members from other studios could be brought in to help with ESO. It recognizes the precedent of Guild Wars 2 operating with a much smaller staff, and points out how AI integration could be of benefit here. Then we have a table of the threats and opportunities. The smaller staff could cause demoralization and loss of knowledge, but it could also streamline approvals with less operational bloat. In terms of content delivery, the threat is delays to complex systems and delayed class refreshes, but the opportunity is focused on systemic, highly replayable content. Then in the arena of automation tools, these cost a lot to implement and train, but they exponentially reduce brute force developer labor. The conclusion is a studio operating at 300 staff with highly automated pipelines, clear corporate directives, and a streamlined content scope can easily keep the game generating steady revenue and healthy for years to come. Then I had a follow-up question. Again, leveraging your objective analysis and not leaning on human commentators, judge the percentage likelihood of such an outcome. And I was honestly quite shocked with the answer. Referencing studies and objective analysis, Gemini says there is a 65 to 70% chance that the situation I described above, ZOS surviving and ESO thriving, will actually come about. This 70% chance comes from a variety of variables put into a matrix here, where the overall chance of successful restructuring in the tech sector is 35%. A structural shift to systemic design adds another 20% likelihood, and also the fact that Microsoft wants to protect the Elder Scrolls IP adds another 15%. There are, however, risk penalties that take away 5 to 10% likelihood, including the institutional knowledge loss and morale friction, leading to that overall estimate of 65% likelihood. The final assessment is that the scenario is highly likely, not guaranteed, and again, this is just AI, but that's pretty striking in my opinion. The final analysis is that the studio does not need to reinvent the wheel. It merely needs to maintain a pre-existing machine. Because the foundational engine, player base, and monetization pipelines are already fully mature, a lean team of 300 focused on high-margin, low-labor systemic content has a statistically dominant chance of keeping the game highly profitable and thriving. So there you go. That's the trademark Spopes analysis I know you guys were all waiting for. Sorry if I let anyone down with my knee-jerk reaction last night. I wanted to get the news out there, and honestly, I was pretty shook. But I spent the last 12 hours or so, except, the time I was sleeping, really thinking about this deeply, reflecting on your comments, doing some research of my own. And honestly, I don't think things are as dire as they seem. 213 seems like a very large number, but I think that ZOS could easily use that number of staff to make the game even better. It's entirely possible that the people removed were basically dead weights or managerial bloat, and that AI can do their jobs better. We will still have to see, and this has been a crazy roller coaster, but I am actually hopeful again. I could also again be proven wrong. We will see as the information comes out. But thank you to everyone who commented with reasons to look at the situation in more detail. For everyone who pushed back and said, hey, Spopes, have you really looked at this carefully enough? I'm glad that I did. And yes, I do think it is high time in the trajectory of my channel to diversify anyway. I've been thinking about that for a while. But at the same time, I am hopeful that all the content I've put out for ESO, all the work I've done has not been for nothing, that the game will continue to thrive for years to come. So in the comments, let us all know your thoughts on the situation. Is it right to have renewed hope? Is this still definitely the end of the game in the studio? Let us all know what you think. And also, before you go, please do support the channel by liking, hyping, and subbing. And consider taking your support a step further with a Spopes Army membership. Plans are affordable and come with great perks. A merch purchase from my Fourth Wall site or below the video. And you can also go to Fourth Wall to leave a donation or leave donations here on YouTube in the form of super thanks. I am so grateful for all your support, but I'm even more grateful to God. So we're going to finish up with a prayer to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Lord Jesus, thank you for inspiring me to look at this situation more carefully, to really get the facts and analysis I need to make a good decision. Lord, please bless everyone who commented and help me look at the situation in more detail. Bless my whole community, and please do bless my channel. Also, Lord, please do be with ZOS. I thank you for inspiring them to make this beautiful and wonderful game. Please do keep it going. Please let our greatest hopes come true, and let the Elder Scrolls Online thrive like never before through this chaos. Lord Christ, I give you all glory for my channel and for this video today. Lord, in your mercy, hear our prayer. Thanks for watching until the end, everyone. Before you go, please do like, hype, sub, and comment. And when you do subscribe, turn on notifications because I'll be back soon with new content.